Hello everyone, welcome back again to Angela's Craft Room. Today I've got a card that I made with this lovely stamp set which is called Still Night, and it was in the Holiday Catalogue. You still can get this to the 2nd of January 2019, so if you want that one you'll have to hurry up and get that one. But I think it's going to be a really good stamp set with this lovely owl and branch for all my male themed cards. It's just going to be something different. So I did make a card with it for a colour challenge, and this was what I came up with. And as you can see, I've used the framelits to cut out the owl and the branch, but I really liked how it turned out, so I thought I would share it with you. So to start with, we're going to have, I've chosen a piece of early espresso which is 11 inches long by 4 1/8 of an inch wide, and then I've scored that at 5.5 inches. Then I took a piece of crumb cake which measured 3 7/8 of an inch by 5 1/4, and all I did was stamp the owl in crumb cake ink in the bottom right hand corner there, and then just pop that straight into my card. Okay, and then I took another piece of crumb cake which measures, this is going to be on the front of the card, and it measures 3 7/8 of an inch by 5 1/4 of an inch. And then I've embossed that with one of the new embossing folders which is called Pine Wood Planks embossing folder, and I think it's going to be a really great one for those mail cards. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of ribbon which is crumb cake 3/8 of an inch, and it's the classic weave, and I've already popped on the back a piece of tear and tape, so I'll take that off, so just to save a little bit of time for the tutorial. And I'm just going to pop that onto, just so it grabs it on the back, and just wrap that around. So just got to make sure that that's straight. Just needs to come over a little bit. So that's pretty straight. Just make sure I haven't pulled it too much, which I don't think I have. And I'll just have to cut that. There's a little bit there that's there. And so that it will adhere to my card, I'm just going to pop a piece of tear and tape. This is on the back of the crumb cake. I'm just going to apply a piece there. So then we've got the front piece like that. And then what I did was I cut out the branch, and just to save a bit of time I have just coloured it using an aqua painter and my early espresso ink pad. So I will show you how I do that because I'm going to colour the owl for you. Now I also cut out using a 2-inch circle punch and my Whisper White cardstock, and I just punch that out, and that's going to be my moon. And I'm just going to add some glue on the back of there mainly in the middle, and I'm just going to position my moon about there. So normally I would be masking off the moon, but today I'm just going to do it this different way. And then I've applied on the back of my branch some mini dimensionals, and so I'm just going to position that about there and just press that down. So it was a bit fiddly with the mini dimensionals, but I just really like the effect of the branch sitting up off. You know, if the crumb cake wasn't embossed, you could just stamp it on if you wanted to. So that's that so far. So we'll pop that aside, and then I'm going to bring in my owl that I've cut out with my framelits, and I'll just bring you in a little bit. And so I'm just going to have a piece of paper toweling there with my aqua painter. If I get excess water, I need to wipe that off a little bit. So to start with, I'm going to be using So Saffron. And when you're using the aqua painter with your ink pads, all you need to do is squeeze them a bit, and you should get a little pool of ink in there, and that's what we're going to be using. Now, this is just on plain Whisper White cardstock, the owl, so I don't want to put too much water on there. If I was going to really do it really full on watercolor, I should have stamped him on some watercolor paper, which I didn't. So I'm just going to quickly, so you can see how I'm doing it. I'm not even squeezing any of the water out. I'm mainly using my brush and just applying the So Saffron colour. If I'd stamped him on watercolour paper, I could have squeezed a bit of the water out of the aqua painter, but I didn't want to use it that way. I wanted to, so I'm just being a bit careful up here because I don't want to go out of the lines on the outside if I can help it. So I'm just going to go around here. And it is a very quick way to colour. You could use the stamping blends if you wanted to as well. But this is how I did the branch as well. The branch took a little bit longer because I had to just keep adding the ink until I was happy that it was completely covered. And also with the branch, I did stamp that and cut it out, stamped it on some glimmery white cardstock. It wasn't just the plain Whisper White like this is. So you can see how easy that is to colour. And then I'm just going to go down his body, and I'm just going to, I'm not really worried because I am going to highlight a little bit of his body with, I'll show you how I do that. That's why I prepped the card, a lot of it, before coming on to do the tutorial for you, because that way I can explain what I've done, but the tutorial won't go on forever. And I know some of you do like me prepping, and some of you like me showing the whole thing. So sometimes I'll do the whole thing for those that really like me to do that, and then sometimes I'll just cut everything and put the card together and just let you know how I've achieved that effect. So you can see how quick that is. We're just going to bring it right down. But it's just a matter of just adding the ink until you're happy with it. And because I'm going to highlight it with a gel pen, I'm not really worried too much about it because it's going to be quite wet, and with my original one I was able to let it dry. So that will do just for the body, just for demonstration purposes. And then you just wipe that off there, and we're just going to remove the So Saffron, and I'm going to bring out the crumb cake. And you can see I've already squeezed it. Now the artist has put in all the details in the feathers, so you really don't have to add too much colour. So I did my original one in Blackberry Bliss because it was for a colour challenge. And I have seen some ladies colour these in really outrageous colours. So I just find it a bit difficult to do that, but they do look really great if you're able to, you know, just not think of what colour a real owl is and just really go for it with all your colours, whatever you've got in your craft room. So you can see how fast that is because I'm just doing little circles just to cover the area. And then these long feathers at the bottom, I just do a stroke like that. It's a bit hard to explain, but I'm just using the tip of my brush because I'm not squeezing the water out, as I said before. I'm just using the brush and the ink. So I'll just bring a little bit over near his feet. You only need a real little bit just to add a little bit of colour because you don't want to go outside those lines if you can help it. You just want to add a bit of colour like that. So we'll just brush that off and we'll get rid of him. So that was crumb cake. Now this is early espresso. Oops. So I really want this to be watery, like really watered down colour, because otherwise it's going to be too dark around his eyes. So you can see I haven't even gone back into the ink. I just really watered it down. And that's all I'm going to do as far as colouring him today. So I'll just brush that off. And then I've just got a white Uniball pen. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to highlight where the artist has put just a few flicks, even up around his head. And it's just where the feathers yeah, the artist has done the impression of the feathers. So I'm just, and you don't have to do this step, but I just think it adds a bit of definition to the owl. So you can see how quick that is. And then I just put a little spot in his eye, and even round this white part, you can see by just adding that round his eye there, it really makes his eye pop. I don't know if you can see that in camera, but it really does. It really makes his eyes pop. And then what I'll do is on the feathers, there's like a little line just coming down the middle of the feather, and I just like to have just highlight that line. So you could fiddle with it until you're happy with it, but I'm quite happy with that. I'm just so I think I'll just leave well enough alone, just so you can see how I did that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to apply the owl to the card like that. It is still a little bit wet, but I'll just do it anyway. So we're just going to add a couple of dimensionals, and the owl is quite wet at this stage because I haven't used watercolour paper. I was going to colour him with my blends, but I find by colouring him with the blends you can't water down, excuse me, you can't water down the colour. So that's why I chose to do that. And I'd already stamped and cut him out, and I just didn't want to waste. So yeah, it's just because he's a little bit wet. Just so you can imagine how long it took me to put all those little dimensionals on the back of that branch. And even though I used mini dimensionals, I still had to cut some of them in half. It was quite fiddly, but it was worth it for the finished product. So just one more. It's just because just a bit wet. So then we're going to turn him over, get rid of that, and I'm just going to position him if I was doing this card, what I'd do is I'd let him dry because he is still quite wet. And then if I wanted to add a little bit more, just need to prop him up a bit there. So I really love this owl. As I said, I think it's going to really make great mail cards. Now we've got our owl, and then what I did was I stamped on a piece of So Saffron the sentiment, and I punched it out with my 1 1/4 inch circle, and then I used my scallop punch, which was the 1 3/8 circle, and that was early espresso. So just quickly, I'm just going to grab a couple of dimensionals, and this won't be so painful peeling it off because it's not wet. And then I'm just going to pop that onto my lovely piece of early espresso scalloped, and I'm just going to glue that on the bottom right hand corner. Spread that glue out a little bit, and then I'm going to pop him about there. And you can see it's sliding around a little bit. That's only because I've used the Tombow, which I love using because it does give you those few seconds to move it. Okay, so then we just want to remove this tear and tape. I'll just go back out a bit. Because you'll find if you try and glue your ribbon onto your cardstock with the liquid glue, it doesn't normally adhere to your card very well for you. So it's a very quick card to do. And these colours, Early Espresso, So Saffron and Crumb Cake, go really well together for a mail card. So then I'm just going to glue him straight down on there. You could pop him up on dimensionals if you really wanted to make him pop. but I think using that embossing folder really helps with the definition of your card as well. So that's the card for today, using the Steel Night stamp set and the framelits that go along with that. And so that's the two different colour combinations. This one here was Early Espresso, So Saffron and Granny Apple Green. And this one was Early Espresso, Crumb Cake and So Saffron, with a little bit of Whisper White on both of them. Okay, so that's the card for today. I hope you'll give it a try. And until next time, happy crafting.